Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I don't know if you've seen, but I'm a contestant on the Great Kiwi Bake Off. So fun, so exciting. If you want a signed photo, just let me know. I thought it would be really fun to do a little bake-along series here on my YouTube where we bake some of the elements from each of the episodes that you've seen on TV. You can have a go at home. Send me photos if you have a go at some of these recipes on Instagram, and let's get started. So to kick off our series, we are starting with Cake Week. We are making a chocolate and cherry Swiss roll. This is based on a Black Forest gâteau. We've got a boozy cherry marmalade, a super light chocolate chiffon sponge, chantilly cream, and we're gonna coat it in a silky chocolate ganache. Oh, it's amazing. So let's get started on our sponge. So the base of our Swiss roll is a chiffon sponge. A chiffon sponge is a flourless cake, well in this case it's flourless, and we're using eggs to make it super light and fluffy. So the first thing we're gonna do is separate our eggs. I've got 6 whole eggs here, but we wanna separate the yolks and the whites. Now, before I put my whites in here, I wanna make sure my bowl has no grease in it because it means that my egg whites will whip up really nicely. So to just degrease your bowl, you can use a bit of lemon. You can also do this with vinegar. And I'm just gonna run the lemon around the bowl. I'm also just gonna wipe it just a little bit over my balloon whisk. Then just use my paper towel just to give it a little wipe off. I don't want the juice on there. I just wanna make sure it's degreasing my bowl for me. Good to go. So we need to separate our eggs. I like to separate them one at a time into a separate bowl. That way, if you accidentally split a yolk, it's not gonna ruin your white mixture. So let's go for it. Yolks in here, whites in here. So into our egg yolks, I'm gonna add some caster sugar, and we're gonna beat this really hard with our whisk until it's nice and fluffy. So now my egg yolks are a nice light yellow color. They look lovely and fluffy. We're gonna add some vanilla extract, a wee bit of salt, and we're gonna sift in our cocoa powder. Now we'll just keep whisking to mix in that cocoa powder. Now we're left with a nice thick cocoa egg sugar mixture here. As you can see, I made a little bit of a mess, but if you've seen the first episode, then you probably guessed that that's just part of my character. So we're gonna move on to our egg whites here. I'm gonna whisk them in our stand mixer. I've just got my balloon whisk attachment here. I'm gonna start on a slow speed, and then I'm gonna increase the speed and bring it to soft peaks. Great, so now we've reached soft peaks. I'm just gonna add a little bit of caster sugar here. Now we're gonna continue whisking until we reach stiff peaks. Here we go. Now you'll notice by adding the caster sugar, it makes your egg whites nice and glossy. And now we've reached stiff peaks. You'll know it's stiff peaks because when you lift up a bit, it creates a peak, it holds its shape. Oop, if I can get a chunk for you. It's gonna hold there like a peak. You should also be able to hold the bowl of egg whites above your head. That's how you know you've hit the point. Let's test it. Just push that bit back in. Are we ready? Ah! We did it. Perfect. So now we want to make sure we keep all that air in our lovely egg whites. So mixing it into our nice thick mixture here is going to be a little bit hard to start with. So I'm going to start by just adding a really small amount, one little blob here, and I'm going to whisk this part into my cocoa powder just to loosen it. Now that's just made our egg yolk cocoa powder mixture a little bit looser, so it's going to be much easier to fold in the rest of our egg whites. So to fold in our egg whites, we want to do it a third at a time. So adding a third of your mixture in and really gently using your spatula, or even better, a metal spoon, to fold through. You want to have a slicing action, so we slice through the egg whites to make sure we keep the air in. This is going to take a while, but be patient, it's worth it, because we'll have a lovely airy chiffon sponge. We're just going to keep folding until we've got rid of all of those flecks of white, but still remembering to be nice and gentle. I am sweating up a storm doing this. Who needs the gym? I'm just going to have one really big bicep though. Okay, our egg whites are beautifully folded in. My mixture looks so light and airy, it's beautiful. Now I've got a nice big tray here. I will leave the measurements for this down in the description box in case you want to get one the same size. I have lined it with a sheet of baking paper, but I am also going to spray it with oil as well because we really, really don't want this to stick. And making sure especially to get the edges of the tray. We're going to pour our mixture in, and I'm going to use my offset spatula to level it out. I'm just using my offset spatula to just push the mixture to the edges of the pan because I want to make sure it's the same thickness the whole way through. Not only will it help it cook nice and evenly, but when we roll up our sponge, we want our sponge to be a beautiful, even spiral in the middle. Perfect, it's ready to go in the oven. We're going to put this in the oven for 10 minutes. Now you'll know it's cooked by it will start to just come away from the edges, and if you press down gently, it'll bounce back up. Let's go. Amazing. So as you can see, our sponge has just pulled away from the edge, so that's a good sign that we know it's cooked. And I'm just going to quickly just check the edges with my offset spatula. Yeah, it's looking good. Now over here, I've got a very clean tea towel. You want to make sure that you've got a nice clean one because we're going to put our sponge onto here. Now we're going to use the tea towel to roll up our sponge into into our Swiss roll shape. And we want to do this while it's still hot because that way it will cool in that shape. So when we open it up to fill it out and roll it back up again, it'll almost bounce back into that shape. But before we flip it onto here, I'm just going to dust our tea towel with icing sugar. Just stops the sponge from sticking. So we're going to give it a little good coating. Oh yeah, it's raining icing sugar. We'll just get that last bit. Fantastic. Now we need to flip our sponge out onto this. We need to do it in one go because we don't want it to split. So you've just got to be brave, and be careful because remember it's just come out the oven so it's nice and hot. Okay, now I like to almost like get yourself lined up and we're just going to flip for it. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Then we'll use the oven gloves to just lift the tray off. Perfect. Now we want to be really gentle as we pull off our baking paper. Sponge is looking lovely and it's still quite moist, which is going to be so yummy for eating. Perfect. So now time to roll. So I'm going to use the tea towel to help me roll it. I'm going to flip over this corner here and I'm going to gently roll. You want to be really careful here, making sure that you've got your hands all the way along, checking that it's all rolling, and we just really carefully roll up our little sponge There we go, perfect. Now we just leave this to the side. We want it to be completely cool, so we'll leave it there while we make the rest of our bits and come back to them later. Right, next up, we're gonna make a boozy cherry marmalade. So I've got a jar of cherries here, but you could also use frozen cherries or even fresh cherries if you're like, balling. We're gonna make it boozy by adding some kirsch. Kirsch is a cherry brandy. It's from Germany. It's delicious. Far out, I love that. So we're gonna use it to add a bit of spice to our marmalade. So the first thing we're gonna do is get our cherries drained. Maybe one day. Do it. Here's a fun fact, or top tip. If you hit the side of your jar on the edge there, it should you break the seal. Oh my God, my veins are gonna actually pop out my head. Oh, I actually can't open it. I'm gonna get a hemorrhoid. Am I beating up? Maybe a knife. We did it. We did it! Okay. Back to the cherries. So I'm gonna drain the syrup out. I'm gonna do it in a bowl and keep the syrup because it's like delicious to use for, you could use it in a cocktail. That's probably what I'm gonna use it for with the rest of the kirsch later. Lovely, and we have to do a little taste test. Love cherries. So our cherries are going into our pot here. Perfect. Along with some caster sugar. And we're gonna add in 50 grams of glucose. You could also use corn syrup as well. And the easiest way, this is super sticky. So if you heat up your spoon in some hot water, it's much easier to get out. It just almost drips off the spoon. Now we're gonna pop this onto a high heat, bring it to the boil. Then we're gonna reduce the heat and just let it simmer for around 10 to 15 minutes until it's nice and sticky. And then we'll add the kirsch in afterwards. Our cherries have been simmering nicely in their sugar. Now I'm also gonna use my whisk. You can just mash a few of those cherries just to break up some of the lumps if you want to. Now it's time to add some kirsch. So I'm gonna add in my kirsch. I'm gonna put it back on the heat and just bring it straight up to the boil. I wanna cook off some of that alcohol. And then once it hits boiling point, we're gonna bring it back and pour it into our bowl. Perfect. We're gonna let this cool to room temperature and then stick it in the fridge until we're ready to assemble. Now we're gonna make a super speedy chantilly cream. So I've just got some fresh cream here that I'm gonna pour into a nice big bowl. And I'm gonna be a bit extra today and I'm gonna use a vanilla bean and I'm just gonna get some of the seeds. I've just got a little bit of vanilla bean here. We're gonna split it down the middle and scrape out the seeds to put into our cream. Now, you don't have to throw these little extra bits away because they've still got loads of flavour. So you could put these into some of your sugar in the cupboard to like sweeten it with vanilla flavour. Or you could even put these into custard, into the milk while you're cooking the milk to infuse the milk with vanilla. So don't throw these out because they're valuable. Now, we're just gonna whisk up our cream. I like to do it by hand because you have so much more control and you're way less likely to over whip it. So you're just gonna have to get your muscles out and get whipping. Now my cream has just started to thicken, so I'm gonna add a little bit of icing sugar here just to sweeten it. And then we're just gonna whisk it a little bit more until just soft peaks, or even just before. Perfect. Now we're gonna put this in the fridge until we're ready to assemble. Now the last thing we need to prepare is a dark chocolate ganache. So I've got some dark chocolate here. It's 50% cocoa, and I'm just gonna put it into a heat-proof bowl. And I've just really roughly chopped it, just to make it nice and easy to melt. Now into our chocolate, we're gonna add some butter. Now we're gonna put our chocolate and butter mixture over a bain-marie. So that's why we need a heat-proof bowl. I've just got a little pot here that my bowl fits really nicely on top of. And we're gonna put some hot water into our pot. Now we don't want to fill it up too high. We want it just enough that it creates lots of steam, but that the water doesn't touch the bottom of the bowl. Perfect. Now we're going to put this onto a medium to low heat and just mix it slowly as it begins to melt. Is there anything better than just like silky chocolate and butter together? So this is all melted together beautifully. I'm just taking it off my pot here. Now we're gonna mix in some cream. So I've just got 100 mils of fresh cream here in my lovely little cow jug. We're just gonna pour it in nice and slowly. It's gonna give us beautiful silky ganache. This is one of my favorite things ever to do, especially with my little cow jug. I bought this from a charity shop. She needs a name. If you can think of a name for my lovely cow jug, I actually have two. Leave a comment below. Oh, she's silky. I want to bathe in it. Once your cream is beautifully mixed in and you've got lovely silky ganache, we're just going to put this to the side, leave it at room temperature. We want it to cool down enough that it's not going to heat up our cake, but we don't want it to thicken. We want it to stay runny. So we're just going to keep it on the side until we're ready to pour. Moo! We have all the elements ready for our Swiss roll. Now it's just time to assemble. So I've got our chantilly cream here, our boozy cherry marmalade, our beautiful silky chocolate ganache. I have just taken a little bit of cream and a little bit of our marmalade out to the side for decorating at the end, so I don't forget. That's the scary part. It's time to unroll our beautiful chiffon sponge. We want to do this really slowly to try and avoid any rips or anything like that happening. So, fingers crossed. It's looking good. Do you know, doing this on the Bake Off was one of the most nerve-wracking moments of my whole life, but it looks amazing and it's got a little roll to it, which is fantastic. So I'm gonna start with the cherry jam. I'm gonna lather the cherry jam on, then we're gonna go cream and roll it all back up again. So let's go. And we're just gonna very gently spread it out. I want to move it gently. I don't want to rip my beautiful sponge with our lovely sticky marmalade. That's looking great. Now time for some big dollops of chantilly cream. Oh yeah. Now I want to make sure my cream is really nice and even the whole way through. Now again, really gently using our offset spatula, being nice and gentle. But I'm going to try and get a little bit thinner as I get towards the edge here, because this is the part that's going to be in the middle where we roll up. That's the side we're rolling up from. She's thick. Now you don't need to worry about going right up to the edges, because we are going to trim it before we ganache it. But I think she is ready to roll. This is also bringing back nerves to me. I'm just at home, I need to chill. So we're gonna re-roll, but instead, last time we had the tea towel on the inside, this time we're gonna use the tea towel to roll it up in itself. It's just gonna help give us some leverage. Remember, we need to be gentle as we're taking it off the tea towel too. Fantastic. I'm just going to trim off the edges using a little serrated knife. Don't worry about these little cracks, because we're going to cover it in ganache anyway. So the Swiss roll, I've just put it on this baking cooling rack here, and I'm going to pour over the ganache, and the excess is going to drip down the side, and it's going to have a beautiful shiny coating. Okay, great. Swiss roll is covered. We're going to let it cool at room temperature so that the ganache starts to set a bit, but I don't want to put it in the fridge, otherwise it's going to stick to the tray. So once it's cooled down to room temperature, you can lift it off and put it on any plate that you like, and then we're going to come back and give it a little decorate and then get tucked in, although I have eaten quite a lot of the edges. So I put the leftover chantilly cream that we had just in this wee piping bag. Now I still want this to look super rustic because it's kind of that Swiss roll that you take to your Sunday dinner with your family. But I'm going to do some little blobs, decorate it with some of our leftover cherry marmalade, and just kind of jazz it up, but keep that rustic vibe too. Blob of cherries in each one. Then I've just got the leftover chocolate that I used for the ganache and a fruit peeler or veggie peeler, and I'm just going to peel some little shavings that we can stick on the top to decorate. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Might go for a bit of sprinkling of the little bits on top too. Now it's time to cut a slice. I'm going to cut a really big bit to eat because I'm hungry. It's so beautifully light. You know what? I'm just going to flip it on here. Oh! Oh my gosh. It's so light and fluffy. That is delicious. I really hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and I really hope you have got making this Swiss roll over the weekend. If you do, send me a picture or tag me over on Instagram. I love hearing from you, it makes my day, and I just love seeing what you're baking at home too. That's all for me this week, but make sure you tune in to the next episode of the Great Kiwi Bake Off and then come back to see what recipe we make over here. That's all. Peace! The thing is, I'm getting so full of cake, but I keep eating it. It's so yum.